Hello and welcome to the Capital Area Food Bank recipe video library. Today, we're going to be making our shakshuka recipe. This is a delicious and easy recipe. It's very fresh and has a lot of good flavors, and it is super quick and fun to make. So let's get to it. The first thing we need to do is prep our veggies that go into our shakshuka or the tomato base. The first is going to be one small onion. I had a pretty big onion, so I'm just using half. I like to cut it straight through this little root stem and then keep it all together. I'll show you why this is super helpful. I'm just going to peel back these layers, just as few as I can do, just anything with that kind of like papery texture. And then I'm going to make cuts through the onion this way without cutting through that stem. So this is where that stem becomes helpful. That's going to hold our onion together. So I'm going to make these cuts just like that without going through. I'm going to keep my fingers tucked away and just make these cuts all through, keeping that stem intact. Now you can see that I've made all of these cuts, but the onion is still together. Now I'm going to cut this way and we're going to get a perfect dice without such a mess. Still keeping my fingers tucked away, just making those cuts. And you can see my onion is staying together as I'm cutting and making perfect little diced onions as I go. The next thing we're going to cut is one red bell pepper. You can do any color bell pepper you have. The red ones are just going to be a little sweeter than maybe the green ones. What I like to do is I like to cut off the stem here. Going to keep my fingers tucked away as usual. And then you'll see that you have a lot of pepper left here, and we're not going to want that to go to waste. So you can either cut around it or you can kind of just pop out that stem and toss that aside. And as for this middle piece with all the seeds there, I like to just pick that out with my hand, just like that. Comes up in one piece with all those seeds, and the inside is nice and clear. And you can just kind of pick those extra little bits as you want, but a few seeds will be totally fine. And now, keeping my fingers tucked away still, I'm going to cut what's left into strips and just get it diced up, keeping that rocking motion with my knife. That's going to make it as easy as possible. Just giving it that chop. And with this way of cutting it, we're not getting any waste around that stem. With the main part of the pepper, I like to cut it in half just to make it a little easier to work with. And then I like to keep my fingers tucked away, holding onto the edge, and cut the strips like this. If you're cutting a pepper for a snack, this is a great place to stop. And it's super easy. But we're dicing it today, so I am going to kind of gather them up, tuck my fingers away, and dice. The next thing we're chopping are our 2 cloves of garlic. These still have the peel on, but I'll show you an easy way to get that off. I like to put my knife flat, making sure the blade is facing away from me. And I'm going to use the palm of my hand, kind of the heel part of the palm of my hand. Again, being very careful of the blade and using that to smash the clove. You can kind of hear that crunch sound. And then you're going to be left with the flat clove. Oh, and you can see the peel comes right off. So now we have a nice and easy clove for chopping. So now that our garlic cloves don't have the peel on it, we're just going to do that rocking motion. I like to start by trying to get really thin slices. That's going to make the mincing easier. Just carefully clearing my knife as I go, and just keep doing that rocking motion over the garlic. Again, when I'm having my hand on the knife like this, my fingers are nowhere near the blade. So here I have a pan set to medium heat. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of oil. Here I have olive oil, but you can add any oil that you have right to the pan, and we're going to let that heat up. Now that our oil is nice and hot, we're going to add those onions and peppers into the pan. I'm going to give it a stir and let these cook for about 5 to 10 minutes or until those onions and peppers get nice and soft. I've just been stirring it here and there, and you can see it's starting to get really soft. It's been about 10 minutes, and those peppers and onions are starting to get nice and soft. You can tell because the onions are kind of translucent and the peppers are maybe a little bit not as bright of a color anymore. So I'm going to add that minced garlic. We add it after just so it doesn't burn. And we're just going to cook it for about a minute or until we can kind of start to smell that garlicky smell. And I'm just going to stir while I do this to make sure it doesn't burn. Okay, now I can smell that garlic smell, but I don't see any burnt pieces, so it's time to add our tomatoes and spices. I look for the no salt added tomatoes, and I'm doing 28 ounces. You can buy the big can. I just bought two little cans today because it was a bit cheaper, so just keep an eye out for the price. But it's good to buy the no salt because then we can control the salt and the sodium level ourselves. So I'm going to add these two cans right in. And two. You can also use crushed tomatoes if that's what you have. You can use tomato sauce. This is just going to be a bit chunkier. And I'm going to add our spices. I have 1 teaspoon of cumin, and you can do any spices you like. 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. If you like it spicy, you could do some cayenne pepper or maybe some pepper flakes, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So this is where we'll get that saltiness in there, but still be able to keep the sodium at a healthy level. And I'm just going to stir this on up. Now that this is all stirred up and simmering, I'm going to keep it on medium heat and let it cook for about another 5 to 10 minutes or until that sauce thickens a little bit and there's not as much of the tomato juice. It's been cooking for about 10 minutes, and you can see that when you pull back the spoon, there's not so much liquid. So that's perfect. You can also cook it to whatever texture you like, but that's what I like, a nice thick sauce. I'm kind of just smoothing over the surface here, and then I'm going to use my spoon and make 5 little divots. So I'm just using the back of the spoon and making those divots in the sauce. It's okay if they're not perfect. It's going to be good no matter what. Just kind of clearing some space. So now that I have 5 little pools in the sauce, I'm going to crack my 5 eggs into each of these spots. Very carefully, just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be so yummy. Keeping it to that simmer, that's what's going to help those eggs cook. And one more. Perfect. And now I'm going to put my lid on. I like to use a clear lid if I have it so I can check out what's going on. And I'm going to let those eggs cook about 5 to 8 minutes. Personally, I'm looking for a bit of a runny yolk still, but if you don't like that, you can cook it all the way. If you don't like eggs, you can just use this sauce as a base and put some chicken in there. You probably want to do that already cooked. You could also just do chickpeas or beans, anything like that. So I'm just going to let that hang out until our eggs look done. You can see that our eggs have set up. The yolks are not too runny, but the whites are fully cooked. So that is exactly what we're looking for. So this shakshuka is all set and ready to eat. It looks delicious and beautiful. If you have some fresh herbs, you can put them on top. You can also put something like feta cheese if you like it. I like to eat this with a baguette or over some rice. You can also do a whole wheat pita, or you can also just eat it as is, and that's going to be delicious. I really hope you try this recipe at home. It's super easy, super fresh, and super delicious. You can find our recipe in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. And I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.